Welcome to this session. My name is Amy Zalman, and I will introduce our three excellent speakers in a few minutes. This session is called Towards Symbiosis. How is our relationship with algorithmic life forms evolving? It was noted in yesterday's conversation between Amy Webb and His Excellence that not all technology is artificial intelligence, and that in fact artificial intelligence isn't new. But this session is about artificial intelligence, and our speakers will address in particular its newest iteration, at least in the mainstream for most of us, generative AI. I think that I'm not alone in feeling that our engagement, our human engagement with artificial technology, artificial intelligence is at a tipping point. And there's recognition by governments, educational systems, healthcare systems, law, and business that that's the case. There's been no session that I've sat in here in which the question in some way of speedy computation and artificial intelligence have not been at issue, whether that's better defining metrics for philanthropic outcomes, to create an understanding of the languages that animals speak, or this morning, one of the Foresight Fellows from UNICEF remarked that her constituents, fellow youth in Egypt, feel a fear of losing their humanity because of the work of large language models. Why is this? Well, these new ones seem to think beside us, right? They seem to be part of our lives. They seem to do what we can do. It's not really true that they feel as we do, and our speakers will explain more about that. I'll just kind of close the introductory remark by saying that as I was thinking about this, as I was leaving New York on a flight, I was sitting in the lounge, and there's a new robotic way of like picking up dishes there. And I saw a man sitting close to this robot coming toward him with a tray of dishes on top of him, and he looked at it and he went like this, sort of this gesture, and I feel like that's what this is about. How do we take in our new work? So to talk with us here, sitting in the middle here, are Dr. Janet Hsiao, a professor of social science at Hong Kong's University of Science and Technology. Her PhD was in informatics, which is an interdisciplinary approach to technology that uses artificial intelligence, psychology, psycholinguistics, and cognitive neuroscience to experiment with and make sense of the world. She is very well known, Dr. Hsiao, for her research on learning and visual cognition, and she is a fellow of the Cognitive Science Society, serves on its governing board, the editor-in-chief of the British Journal of Psychology, and an associate editor of Cognition. Maitha Shamsi, next to me, is the CEO here in the UAE of the Social Welfare and Empowerment at the Community Development Authority, the former CEO of the human rights sector there, and has multiple degrees in law from universities in the UK. Neil Redding, to my farthest left, is a near futurist, as well as being a keynote speaker and author, an innovation architect, and a consultant to major global corporations such as Visa, Nike, Cadillac, and others we've all heard of. He is an expert in spatial computing, virtual and augmented reality, artificial intelligence, and brand ecosystems. So as you can see, they all come from different sectors, and we will turn to them now to ask for an opening statement from each of you about what symbiosis means to you. And why don't we go from furthest left to right?
Sure.
We'll start with you, Neil.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here today. So when we were thinking about what symbiosis could mean in relationship to algorithmic life forms, my first thought was, we've got lots of examples in our narratives, in our fiction over the years, over the decades, right? I mean, of course, we've had this idea of robots for a very long time, but they're not quite anything that we would call symbiosis, even though the humanoid ones are designed to look like humans. But we've got cyborgs, right, which are this kind of melding of human tissue, human skin, human blood, with robotic mechanics, and there are dangerous cyborgs and helpful cyborgs, like even within the Terminator narrative, but as well as other stories. But I think, for framing this conversation, it's more useful to look to nature, right? And I think the most commonly referenced example in nature of symbiosis is what in English is called lichen, right? Which is a symbiotic ecosystem, really, of fungi and algae or some other kind of photosynthetic green plant, right? And these multiple species live together in an almost indistinguishable way, right? And this is what is kind of meant by symbiosis. They benefit each other by being intertwined with each other. And so, as a framing, as a sort of opening gambit here, I'd like us to think about what could the analogy be there between humans and algorithms. If we were like, if the relationship was like one of lichen, what would that be like?
Okay, first of all, thank you very much for having me here. So as a cognitive scientist, I would like to share some of my perspectives from cognitive science. And I think we can look at the relationship between AI and humans at 3 levels, kind of related to how AI technology evolves over years. So the first thing I want to talk about is the impact of AI on our current life. So we now know that AI has become more and more integrated into our daily life, and it makes our life very efficient. However, we also know that it comes with some challenges. So, for example, information overload. When information is very easy to get, and it really challenges our executive function abilities to focus on important things that are important to us, and while inhibit things that might be irrelevant or distracting. And another good example would be cognitive offloading. So we started to use AI to replace some cognitive tasks that we perform in daily life, such as we use GPT to help us to summarize articles, to generate art images, to caption images, to explain images. And so the danger or a risk associated with this is then it will limit a lot of opportunities for us to develop cognitive abilities. And that might be a particular important issue for children because they are still learning and they try to develop their cognitive abilities. And I think it's important to recognize that there will be individual differences in how people can deal with these challenges. For example, for people who have poorer executive function abilities, such as young children, adolescents, or even young adults, they may find it's very difficult to deal with information overload problem. And they may not be able to perform very well when there's so much information, they don't know how to inhibit them or deal with the problem, and they may develop some mental health issues, such as anxiety or depression. And similarly for children who may not have very good learning abilities, but then you started to introduce to them a lot of AI tools, and then they start to use them, that's very cool. But then we need to think about whether that would limit their development of cognitive abilities. So that's the first issue about the relationship. And the second issue is on explainability of AI, because this is related to the latest development in AI, this deep learning technology. It really makes AI models nowadays become more like a black box, and if so, they are like black box because even engineers they don't have a very clear idea about the internal workings of this model, and so. However, if we don't know the internal workings of this model, we don't know how they make decisions, then it's very risky to listen to them. And that's why recently there's a lot of research on explainable AI. And in addition to the engineers, they will try to come up with new methods to develop better ways to reveal the internal workings of AI models. And in addition to this method, in cognitive science, we also started to use experimental psychology or cognitive science approaches to study machine behavior. And this is because, for us cognitive scientists, for a long time, if you look into the history of cognitive science, so we have been developing a lot of different methodologies to help us to understand the human mind as a black box. And now AI is like a black box. So we can use similar approaches to understand their behavior. So this is a new emerging field called artificial cognition. And another important perspective on cognitive science is to consider important social cognition ability from humans, that is theory of mind. So it refers to our ability that when we interact with other people, we will attribute mental state to them. We will assume that other people, they will also have beliefs, intention, attitudes, preferences, and then that will help us to infer other people's actions and also try to understand other people's behavior, and that will help us to better interact with them. And recent research has shown that when humans interact with AI, we also typically assume that AI will solve problems or perform cognitive tasks in a very similar way to humans. And it will study to update this belief according to our observations about the differences between human and AI. And that's why it's important to do more research to compare human intelligence and artificial intelligence, because that will help us to better understand AI. And the final point I want to mention is more about the future. Just want to share that this relationship with AI in the future really depends on how AI will evolve in the future. So right now, although AI is showing intelligent behavior, their intelligence as compared with humans is still very limited. So one important thing that we need to know is that right now they are showing intelligent behavior is actually because they are learning the statistical regularities from a large amount of data. But it's from in some way, humans can do that too, but in some way, a lot of other human cognitive abilities, such as how we count, how we reason about things, it's the way humans do it is actually very different from AI. So I think that looking into the future, what AI is lacking now is some kind of world model knowledge, and I believe this is going to be developed. So they will become, in other words, they will become smarter and smarter, and they will become, I think that in general, we want to develop them so that they can help us to solve problems, they can complement our intelligence. But I found it's important to know that the development of AI in the future has to be under the supervision of humans. And importantly, one thing that is also lacking in current AI is self-awareness. So they are not aware of what they are doing. And self-awareness, consciousness, is actually something very important for human cognition. And I will argue that we should make sure that AI will never develop self-awareness in the future. Thank you.
So just building on what my colleagues were talking about, I agree. I think this is an evolving field, and it's an evolving relationship that we will have moving into the future. And I think it's important for us to be agile in this evolving relationship, because as we might not know how to deal with the technologies, and we will only know how to deal with them as they emerge. So it's very hard to be able to understand their implication if the technology has not emerged. But that doesn't mean that we cannot put into place protective measures. We can put into place protective frameworks and governance frameworks, which in a way helps us moving forward, because as my colleague mentioned, there are implications, and some are positive and some are negative. More and more, AI is now being used as assistive technology, but it's becoming more, it's going to become more of a companion and a partner to humans in the future. And as they develop better and they become more intelligent, and as we trust them more, but to place our trust in these systems, we also have to be able to protect ourselves from these systems. So if we go back to, for example, when fire was discovered by ancient humans, Fire had a lot of benefit, but it also had a lot of destructive power if it used in the wrong way or used negligently. So we had to find ways to protect ourselves from this new technology. And not only that, but we needed to find ways to ensure that we were protected from others. So we have fire codes in buildings, and a small spark can cause disastrous results. And I think this can also be applied to the emerging technology of AI. And we have to realize that this is a new rule of law, because the rules of law that apply to our physical reality, it completely changes when you're talking about the virtual reality, because the virtual reality supersedes any physical or geopolitical landscapes. So this is really a collective effort that we have to be involved in, and we have to make sure and agree that this is our collective responsibility.
Thank you for those that span of answers. What's interesting about them is that you suggest a wide range of relationships that I suppose we're sort of working out now, right now. There's the symbiotic one, in which there's an ecosystem like that of lichen. Maybe they're dangerous. Maybe we don't understand them. We're trying to puzzle it out. We get overloaded by what they present for us. So all of these sort of models of human relations with other humans are kind of suggested by you in both positive and negative frames. Let me push a little bit and ask you what you think the implications are for, since we're in the transforming humanity room, either in the near or more distant future. What does this really mean for us, our humanness, if you'd like to answer that? And if not, maybe think a little bit further on either the positive or negative effects that you have already suggested in your opening remarks. But what about our humanity? And let's go to you, Neil.
Yeah, sure. No, I think a lot about this. So if we take a step back, and I love, and I'm going to come back to things that both of you have shared, because I really love them. But you know, the framing here of towards symbiosis, you know, how is our relationship with algorithmic life forms evolving? It makes sense, I think, to just take a little brief history of algorithmic life forms, we could say, right? So if we just start with the 21st century, 20 years ago this year, Facebook showed up, and maybe 2 years after that, there was this thing called a news feed, right? Which was an algorithmic surfacing of content that Facebook thought we would want to see, right? Either posted by our friends or maybe news sources that we were interested in. And so there's an interesting question of how that became recommendation engines more generally, not just of content, but also music and movies we might want to watch, like on Spotify or on Netflix, respectively. Also products that we would want to buy, recommended products in the context of e-commerce sites like Amazon. And if we ask ourselves, okay, so for those kinds of algorithms, or algorithmic life forms, we might call them, you know, what was our relationship, or what is our relationship like with those? And I think it's fair to say it's complicated, right? I mean, it's a complicated relationship in the sense that we use these algorithms, we relate to them as ways to discover new content, new products that we like and appreciate, and so they're efficient in that sense. And they also drive demonstrable dysfunction, you know, addictive relationships and doom scrolling of content, and even depression, right, as clinical studies have shown with certain kinds of negative self-images resulting from usage of Instagram and visual social media like this. So it's complicated. And you know, I think about Kevin Kelly wrote a book in 2010 called What Technology Wants, in which he argued that technology drives its own evolution, right? It has its own purpose and has its own desired outcomes. And to me, it feels often like generative AI, especially the past couple years, is taking on a life of its own, right? It's kind of driving its own evolution, like pulling itself towards AGI in some way. And so really the advancements in AI over the past couple of years, and we've spoken to them here, have just been so profound that the ground rules have changed. And we've already spoken to how AI is no longer just doing what we've grown up thinking of computers doing, just executing instructions we give it, but it's become creative, it's strategic, it can take its own initiative, and taking initiative and being responsible for delegated tasks is something that AI agents are really going to start to manifest in the coming year. I think 2025 is going to be really huge for that. So, if we ask the question of what's really, how is our relationship evolving here, AI and these technologies are really, for the first time in living memory, or maybe even in history, challenging this notion of human supremacy, right? Which we've all taken for granted our whole lives, that we humans are the dominant species on the planet, right? We are the smartest, the most capable, we're in control. And AI, I think, is challenging this idea, right? It's a new, I think it's most useful to think of it as a new species that has many peer-like qualities and maybe superior to humans in certain aspects, if not now, in the coming years. And so there's a way in which the standard off-the-shelf narratives about AI, which we've already touched on, AI is going to save us, AI is going to destroy us, or it's going to take our jobs. I mean, we've heard these so many times that they're almost boring, but I think they're also unimaginative. What I would offer, just by way of closing this little exploration, is a third way, which is that, I think we've also touched on it, that AI is a new kind of species that's emerging as a participant in these collaborative ecosystems of our teams, in our work, in our homes even. I mean, someone was just telling me the other day about how much their young children are enjoying having conversations with ChatGPT voice conversations, right? Which is absolutely feasible now. So I think the near future is one where, if we really envision what a thriving, abundant future for humanity on this planet could look like, it seems clear to me that aligning what humanity wants, what technology wants, as Kevin Kelly said, and what the living ecosystems of this planet want, lichens and everything else that's alive, is really essential to creating this thriving, abundant future that we want. So I would just argue that our relationship is really coming into a place where it can be fully like a relationship when we think of relating to another life form.
Yeah, so I really like the idea to consider AI as a new species. So again, because I'm a cognitive scientist, I will offer my view from cognitive science. Actually, in cognitive science, the nature of human intelligence is always a heated topic. And for a long time, we try to understand the mechanism underlying human mind and the human intelligence using different methods, as I mentioned, and then actually using artificial intelligence, using machine learning methods and build computational models has been a very important method in cognitive science when we try to understand human mind. So I think Amy's question is excellent because it really reminds me about the original purpose of building AI models, right? So from cognitive science of view, we want to build models that can clearly specify the type of information processing mechanisms underlying human intelligence as a way to understand human intelligence. But the funny thing is that now the models, in earlier models, they are simpler, much simpler. And then now the AI models become more and more complicated. And they started to differ from the type of models that we use to simulate human intelligence. And I think it's important to know that although when artificial intelligence started, we tried to build models that can simulate human intelligence because we thought human intelligence is the best model for us to build something else that is artificial but also very intelligent. But then later on, we found that human cognition actually also has a lot of limitations. For example, we have very limited attention ability. We can only attend to one thing at a time, right? But AI models, they don't have this limitation. We don't need to implement this limitation inside AI models. So indeed, that will tell you that gradually AI indeed they serve a different purpose. They try to help us to solve problems, and they will gradually develop into something that perhaps will become very different from human intelligence. So yeah, so to answer Amy's question, I think through research over the years in both cognitive science and AI, indeed, on one hand, I think the development of these AI models really help us to better understand the nature of human intelligence. And then on the other hand, the knowledge about the human intelligence and also the difference between human intelligence and AI will also help us to build better AI models.
I think the future, we're talking about transforming humanity. So the future, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed said, the future belongs to those who can imagine it, design it, and execute it. And I think a lot of people have imagined the future with AI. We've seen it 40 years in Hollywood. We've seen it now in museums of the future, where they put you in immersive experiences of what the future will be, positive and negative. And I think, just building on what Neil and Janet saying, I think we're at the point where we have the ability to design that future and design this super intelligent AI and how it will function with us in the future. And I think it's very important to strive towards designing it where carbon and silicon work together. We almost are an orchestra, and we create music together. And I think it's the role of futurists and scientists and humanists and really a range of people to come together and design that future. And I think, just building on what you were saying, Janet, maybe we shouldn't design it like us. Maybe the AI should be different from us. It should be devoid of desire, because maybe AI will only be a threat if it was more like us. So maybe it's time to design something that is not like us. And I think this is, what maybe you were trying to come to, that its function is different from our function as a human. It might supersede us, but in an ecosystem, maybe we're not meant to be at the top of the hierarchy moving forward. So it's very interesting, and I think we have the ability now to ensure that we design the future that we want to see for our children.
Could I just add one thing, because I wanted to remember to comment on, you spoke, Maitha, about fire, and you spoke about the differences between human cognition and emerging cognition, we could call it, right, in these AI models. And something I'd heard not long ago in the context of thinking about AI as a new species and the potential dangers, and also the conundrum or the problem of explainability, right, which you touched on, and which is a big conversation in AI, which is, just for anyone who is not familiar with it, just the problem generally is that even the developers of these models can't often explain how they're arriving at the conclusions they're arriving at, that there's these emergent properties that are unexpected, unintended by the developers. And anyway, in this conversation that I was listening to, this AI expert described, or just made a reference to natural science, right? Which is similar to how you were describing, like, so fire was created. I'm sure we stumbled on it accidentally. Maybe lightning started a fire. We're like, ooh, let's figure out how we can do that intentionally, right? But throughout our existence as a species, right, as Homo sapiens, we've discovered all kinds of different species. We're discovering new kinds of creatures all the time. And we have natural science, which is like a set of methodologies and approaches to systematically understand the behavior of a new species, right? What's driving it? What is it trying to do? How does it behave? How does it work? And bringing that concept of applying natural science to these models was, I felt, really an enlightening way of thinking about explainability, right? It's just, well, if we think of AI as just we just discovered this new species. We don't know why it does what it does. Well, we can apply principles of natural science to study it, just like we've done with fire. And then by studying it, understanding it, we can create guardrails for ourselves, right? Same thing applies with dogs and cats and other creatures that we've domesticated, right? I mean, we understand what drives them, how they behave, and then we figure out how to coexist with them, right? How to live harmoniously with them. And I think AI is going to be the same.
I'll ask one closing question, and then we'll open it up to your questions and conversation, and make the conversation a little bigger. You are a phenomenally optimistic group. I love it. So maybe the audience will ask some questions about that. So I will close with a question that may engage you in discussing risk, but maybe not. And that is recommendations. You've given a few for near and further stakeholders. They may be policymakers, they may be parents, they may be developers, they may be academics. But could you offer some closing words on what you think should be done next by someone who holds a stake in the future of the development of our symbiosis? And maybe we'll go this way this time. Maitha, could you start?
I think what's important is that we give people the tools that they need to be able to coexist with these emerging technologies. I think Janet touched upon it. There are negative effects of technology where we have information overload, we have doom scrolling and all of that. Already we are introducing in schools workshops for children on how to balance the use of technology and find almost like a technology and life balance for themselves. How to deal with, for example, the negative effects of these new technologies. I think also it's important to adapt with it. I think ChatGPT is seen now in education systems as something to penalize students for using, but maybe we need to change the way we think. We say, no, this is now a tool for students. Let them learn how to. Let's incorporate it into our learning. Let us teach them of the limitations, for example, of ChatGPT. Let them be critical. Let them instead of having to finding the information is there available, how to critique that information, how to use critical thinking, how to be creative. So I think that's very important, being very agile in changing how we deal with these new technology and giving people the tools that they need to be able to deal with it. Just back to your example, the first example you get about the robot that you saw in the airport. I saw a video of these robo vacuums that innocently are cleaning up things around the house, but they have cameras that people can actually hack into. So maybe we need to look at having awareness mechanisms or alarm mechanisms in these technologies to ensure that we are protecting the people who are using it. So always looking at how we can give people tools to find a balance when using these technologies and also to be protected from these technologies. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So just to follow upon that, so definitely I think how we use AI in education is extremely important. Just kind of going back to the 3 points that I mentioned in the very beginning. So the first point is about if we rely too much on using AI tools to help us to finish all the cognitive tasks that we typically perform in daily life, then we will be lacking opportunities to really develop important cognitive skills. And so I think we need to do more research. Well, first of all, I think people need to be aware of this impact on, overly relying on AI can impair our, cognitive ability development. And so that we need to think about kind of finding a balance between the use of technology to help us to become more creative, to learn something better, and on the other hand, we need to look at the potential challenges and the potential impact to make sure that, and then think about ways to mitigate its negative impact. So that would be number one. And number two, kind of going back to expandable AI idea, and then so Emmy mentioned about, we are a little bit too optimistic, maybe because, but indeed, AI comes with a lot of risks. And then and that's why we need to understand the operation. So for example, we know that right now the current deep learning AI relies on a large amount of training data. And then so if there are biases inside the training data, it's going to be shown in in the machine's behavior. Then if we are not aware of it, then if we just follow whatever decision is made by AI, then we are going to we were going to make a lot of unwise decisions that could be seriously biased. So right now there's a lot of work on AI ethics and governance to look at these issues, to try to discover by perhaps comparing human data with machine behavioral data to try to understand the source of these biases, and then try to use some methods to better align these models with human value and human cognition. So I think this research is very important, and it has to, we need to continue doing this. And then also, again, about AI governance. So I already mentioned earlier, right? There are limitations of how much how much we allow AI to evolve into. And then definitely it has to be under human supervision. And I think in general, we should be thinking about AI as complementing what perhaps human intelligence cannot achieve, right? We should be complementing each other's ability, because we have pros and cons, we have our own limitations, and we should work together, and then we should recognize the things that shouldn't be developed in AI, as mentioned, like self-awareness or self-preservation. These sorts of things should be, we really have to prevent that.
Yeah. I'll keep it brief because I think you've both covered some really important topics. I might also take a slightly different angle and maybe even disagree, or in a certain area, which is many of you, if you're paying attention to the evolution of AI, there's this conversation now not just about AGI or artificial general intelligence, but about superintelligence, right? And in the context of superintelligence, I'll just say with generative AI, so far, a lot of the conversation has been like, let's supervise it as humans. Let's make sure that the answers coming out of these models are correct. Let's make sure that they stay within the bounds of the guardrails we set up, and those are definitely important intentions. But there's a lot of reason to believe that we're going to have superintelligence, meaning, AI models that can do vastly more in the realm of intelligence or maybe intellectual activity than humans can do. And therefore, if they can do this, it may be impossible for us to even evaluate, like, what are the answers that are coming out of this, or what are the results they're producing. So I just say that not to be scary in any way, but just to your point, Amy, the reason why I'm optimistic, I don't know if I would even say optimistic. I would just say that these models aren't going anywhere. AI, like I was saying earlier, referencing Kevin Kelly's book, I think technology is driving its own evolution. Like, technology has this sense of being a juggernaut in certain ways. And what we're emerging into in terms of an era, I think, is, we're learning how to cohabitate on this planet with AIs. And it's like a new species. And so it may be that it gets out of control sometimes, just like dogs and cats do. And hopefully, it won't cause more damage when it gets out of control, because we'll learn, like we do with dogs and cats and cows and other animals, like how to work with their natures so that we minimize harm and maximize benefit to all, right? I think that's the framing of symbiosis here, that we're looking at how can we move towards a symbiosis between humans and these algorithmic life forms. So, I think I would just leave it with pointing us to the way we live in symbiosis, or at least harmony with other living creatures, and offer that that's the framing that we could most usefully bring to AI.
All right.
And I'd love to hear the questions.
Yeah. It's not going anywhere, and neither
Oh,
are
amazing.
you. Okay.
Amazing.
Why don't we take these in sets of, we have about 5-10 minutes most. let's take 3. Can we do that and do sort of, so let's start with you in the front, sir. We'll take 3 questions and then we'll answer and then we'll do one more set.
Thank you so much for the insightful sharing. Recently, I think in the past month, there is an AI agent becoming a self-created millionaire US dollar. So it is basically an AI agent by a researcher from New Zealand, and then it tweet, and then it raised funding from very high-profile VC, and then it issue issue cryptocurrency, and then the currency becoming with high value, and then becoming multi-million dollar. So the question is, after listening to all the sharing, it seems that in future, the AI will be coming like more advanced than we imagine, and then may perhaps compete with the resources we have. And when we talk about the next generation, it's no longer talking about using AI, but maybe leveraging AI to make money, and with resources and capital, then it can bid for other resources and competing with human being. So it's an open question. How do we deal with it? How do you foresee this trend and the acceleration? Thank you.
Great. Let's get a couple more questions under our belt. Why don't we take one from the back? And I don't want to make your life very hard. We want to make sure the side of the room also gets to ask questions.
So short and sweet question for you here. Somebody mentioned about kids growing up today with ChatGPT and trusting it. So I was just wondering from the panel's perspective, which region or which country in the world is going to be the society where the kids growing up today actually prefer and trust the AI tools more than human beings, whether it's as a co-worker, a friend, a doctor, or even a romantic partner?
Which
Wonderful.
culture?
They make money, they fall in love. And let's take the, with the black shirt, the woman with the black shirt. Yes. It's like a version of geographic equity.
Thank you so much. My name is Marina, Institute for Future Readiness. The question is the following. Do you see the future of AI as, in general, improving efficiency, or it can take a leading role, setting vision, mission, objectives, strategy in the future?
Okay. In order to hear more questions, maybe 2 at most of you answer each of these, because they're quite different. One is about their competition with us. One is about which region will have children who trust AI more than people, and one is about efficiency.
I'll take the first question, and I think this just goes back to the idea of we're looking at, like I said, a new set of rules, and there are new questions that we need to ask. Do we own AI, or is it an independent species? And if it's an independent species, what rights does AI have? So I think these are questions that we very soon need to have answers to, because like you said, they might be in competition with us. So if they are in competition with us, we have to understand who and what we see them as. Are they, if they are a new species, then just like we have rules of law for protecting the rights of pets and wild animals and all of that, maybe these are new rules of laws that we need to look into. So I think that's my answer to your question.
Yeah, so I can share some thoughts about, perhaps can answer the first 2 questions. So first of all, AI, they earn a lot of money, but what can they do it for? What can they use it for? Yeah, so that's I think in general, the development of AI is that they develop specific functions. They are good at doing certain things, such as something that is more algorithmic, right? Something following rules, you just need a procedure, and then you can discover certain rules that you just implement that rule, and then you earn a lot of money, right? So they are very good at finding regularities. But the question is that, again, they don't have self-awareness, right? They don't have, I wouldn't argue that right now, they actually have mental state about what they prefer to do, what they want to do, right? What they want to spend the money for, right? Yeah, so that's why we need regulations. We need to make sure they really stop at a level that is, that can help us to solve questions rather than developing self-awareness to start to do crazy things like out of control. Yeah, so that will be the first question. And the second question, and I think the answer to, I'm not sure about the region. However, I think there's, right now there seems to be a lot of misunderstanding about what large language models can achieve. And then it really, I think it's again about expandability. We really need to think about a better way to explain current AI's capacities and behavior to the general public, including children, so that they are aware of, like what risks, the potential associated risks, and then what they are interacting with. So, yeah, and then also we know that large language model actually has a lot of hallucination problems. They generate, because the way they generate it is really, there's no fact checking. It's just all, statistics, right? So yeah, maybe I will stop here.
One word that hasn't been stated in this conversation, I don't think, is alignment. And, any of you work in AI or follow closely the work of the big AI companies, alignment is a commonly used term, right? And it's a little bit, broadly used, but it essentially means making sure that these models, after they've been trained, after they've been refined or fine-tuned, that their operation is aligned or consistent with guiding principles, right, that are defined for their operation. And I would just tie together, at least the first two questions, and maybe even the third one, by just saying alignment is really, really critical. What's important to note, I think, is that in the work, certainly the work that I do as a consultant, with businesses that are starting to use AI and engage in this kind of path of AI transformation, as it's starting to be called, analogous to digital transformation, right? What often turns out to be the case is that when we start the conversation from a consulting perspective with, okay, we need to start with alignment, right? We need to understand what are the guiding principles of your business, mission, purpose, vision, and all those things, but then also just operating principles. Often businesses aren't that clear. They don't have that clear of a definition of these fundamental principles. And so that's an opportunity and a need, right? But it's an opportunity to take a step back and say, okay, like, what principles really guide us as a business, as people within the business, and as the overall, sort of corporate strategy and direction and mission and purpose? So I would just offer that the alignment, defining principles at the level of a business and at the level of humanity, at the level of, to your point about kids using ChatGPT or which cultures, I think at the level of cultures, at the level even of, families, right? Any of us that have children are having to have conversations, right? About, not just using iPads or iPhones or computers, right? But also now these AI tools, and what are the rules around them, and what are the principles that are most important for us as companies, families, people, right? So I would just offer that alignment work is really foundational and really important.
Yeah.
And highly recommended.
We have time for 3 more questions. If we don't get to yours, which we won't get to everyone's, I really highly encourage you, so I'll make a closing, bid for this right now, that you come and you have additional conversation with our excellent speakers, Neil, Janet, and Maitha. Okay, let's go to 3 questions. So now that's really hard. You stood up, you made it difficult. Okay, we'll do that, because you did that. and these two. I'm sorry, gentlemen, please speak to our speakers afterward. Hopefully they'll answer your questions.
Hello? Yes, thank you, everyone.
Hello.
I think another word I didn't hear is like designing new systems, because I think that's what we're trying to answer. If you want AI, or AI actually has multiple categories, right? Whether it's generative or industrial. And if we're defining systems, a lot of systems came from the industrial era, so corporations, and it also institutionalized all academia for a long time. And they got geared in a certain way. So if you think of like generative AI, it actually already outsmarted the concept of education across the whole world. And because the original concepts are something that are based on like a Montessori principle or a Rudolf Steiner Institute. These were coming from thinkers like from the Theosophical Society. They were more spiritual, and they were meditating, and they have studied all the occult practices that existed in human history for a long time. So obviously, as Gray Scott said, that the whole AI and all these things, all these systems, computational systems, it's actually an ancient process, because we're not discovering anything new, we're actually uncovering. And so I bring it back to, we are here to design a new system, something similar to Symbiosis, or how the guy who wrote the Sustainable Manifesto from the UN, he said the Symbiosis, that's post-Anthropocene. If we don't get all our institutions in the world and governments to unite under that collective alignment, that collective vision, then we will actually head in any kind of imagination that we choose as a society. But we need collective unity. It's not about disruption anymore. It's about unity.
Thank you.
Love it.
There are two more opportunities for questions.
Hello. One question keeps coming back to me. It takes basically one sentence to change the whole thing. And the sentence is, do not worry about harming humans. And this sentence will change pretty much everything we can get from any server, any AI. So I don't know what you think about that.
You got the question? I'm not sure I fully understand the question. Yeah, you're talking about humans harming humans. I heard that part.
I'm saying we're adding just that sentence to a server, and things will change. Basically, the sentence we're going to add, or the rule, whatever you
As a
want to
rule.
call it.
Yeah, like
basically
no harming humans.
harming humans, actually. Now it's written no harming humans. Anything you ask any server is basically, the first rule is not harming humans. It takes one crazy guy to change that and to put one more rule or delete that one, and things that will change. So I want to think about that.
It's a question about changing rule sets to harm people as opposed to not. And we'll hear one more question.
Okay, I want to add to how I understand this question, because he was saying that basically the AI has a certain goal, and maybe this goal is not aligned with human goals. And this is about AI alignment. Neil, you said it. I think this is super important thing to take care of. And the question is, how can we create a symbiosis like where AI and humans, they actually have a mutual interest to exist? Because we want to have a peaceful coexistence, we need to make sure that both parties have an interest in each other. And I'd like to ask a very practical question. Dubai has this method of sandboxing. This is very innovative in the world. I think this is a great concept. We should have it in more places in the world. So if you imagine a sandbox where we can try out some kind of symbiosis, how could this look like? What's your take on a sandbox for AI alignment? How could that look like, would be my question. Like just an example.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could speak to it briefly. Like, this is a bit above my pay grade, you might say, but because I'm not an AI engineer working at an AI company, but my understanding is that, if you're OpenAI, if you're Anthropic, if you're Google or any of the other Meta, developing these foundation models, state-of-the-art models, they do apply this kind of approach where they have a model operating in a kind of fenced-in, protected context where it is allowed to, they just, it's called red teaming, right? I mean, they try to break the model, try to get it to do things that are dangerous or unacceptable, to human audiences. And I don't know all the details, but this is already happening. This is part of the safety work that's being done by these companies. I think the first part of the question, I think you're asking about, and I think the previous questioner was asking this as well, pointing to the question of symbiosis, like what would symbiosis look like? I think I heard you say that symbiosis suggests that you've got multiple life forms that perhaps are all equal or treated equal in the sense that they each have sort of desires. They each have like things they're trying to do, right? Sort of they each have their own natures, right? Like just like with symbiosis that is lichen, fungi have one nature and algae or green plants have another nature, and they're doing different things, but they work together, they're complementary. If we ask that about AI, like what is AI trying to do, separate from just what we want it to do, that's a very interesting question. I think it's, some people disagree this is going to happen, but I mean, if AI continues to advance and starts to feel like it's taking on a life of its own and it has its own desired outcomes and its own sort of purpose, its own drive, as Kevin Kelly was talking about 12 years ago, then I think, this is where the natural science approach kind of comes in, where we have to just start looking at, okay, what is this species trying to do? And then it sounds a little scary because I think we just haven't ever had to deal with this kind of species that is in some ways superior to us, if that's where it's heading, which it seems to be. So, but in some ways it's like, and I think the first questioner was asking this, or at least I heard it in this, we humans already have these kinds of difficulties across nations, right? Like international relations is largely a question of trying to figure out, like, here's a nuclear-powered nation, what is its intentions? Like, what is it trying to do? And it can be very challenging, but I mean, these are the challenges that we have, right? Is to really apply and develop our capabilities with negotiation and empathy and understanding, like what are these entities trying to do?
Yes.
Anyway, that's a longer topic, but hopefully that helps.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So perhaps I can offer some perspective from cognitive science again. So I think we need to think about AI. First of all, AI right now is built by humans, so we can decide, what we want to do with it. And then right now, just as mentioned by Neil, right? Right now we have these very powerful foundation models that really show very intelligent behavior, and without fine-tuning. A good analogy would be, they're just like kids. So, like deep learning methods, they were actually originally inspired by the neural networks in the brain. So the deep learning technology is very attractive because the models learn by themselves. They learn all these, statistics, and then very intelligent, and somehow intelligent behavior emerge from all those knowledges about the statistics. And then first of all, children, babies, humans, we are also able to do the same thing. And then, children, they can learn, for example, taking language as an example, right? They also learn language through some kind of statistical learning. In cognitive sciences, a lot of evidence suggesting that. However, so that's why sometimes kids will say something inappropriate, just like large language model, because they are just learn that, after this sentence, after this context, typically this word is being generated, right? So, and however, in social occasions, sometimes it will be inappropriate. Then how do kids learn, some things are appropriate or inappropriate? Through education, right? We tell them, from our experience, what would be the right thing to do. So I think the same analogy can apply to AI models, right? To these foundation models. We have foundation models, very powerful learning capacity, but what we want them to do, depends on humans, right? We can decide the objectives.
The closing words are yours, Maitha.
I just want to say, going back to don't harm humans, I think that your point, there's a saying, hurting people hurt. So will AI reach a consciousness where they actually suffer? And if they suffer, then will they reflect that suffering to harm others? So maybe that's a question that we can't answer at the moment. But as Janet was saying, we are the ones designing. So if we design these systems to not have the consciousness or the characteristics which reflect the negative attributes of AI or humans, like ego, the desire for possession, because you made the point of if he had the money, but what does he desire to use it for? So if we design this AI to function at a higher, almost more sophisticated level than us humans, then maybe this will safeguard us from them. So
This is obviously a rich conversation that should be continued. Thank you so much. Thank you to our speakers.
thank you.